Afternoon, friends. Welcome to the Seven Pillars Talk Show, where we walk you through the 7 pillars of building and sustaining your unbreakable life. Well, I don't know if you caught the tagline for today's podcast, but I'm so excited to chat with you for a few moments with a really cool friend of mine. And the title is Home for the Holidays. We're about to embrace the holiday season, and maybe you're catching this live, or maybe you're catching it on the replay. But one of the things that's so common about the holiday season is that we're around other people. And one thing I've learned in my life, newsflash, is the fact that just because I'm going through something or I've experienced something doesn't mean that I automatically understand and can meet people where they're at. And I want to be a better steward of my own relationships. And I want to be a better friend, a better mentor, a better mom, a better wife for those around me. So today, our special guest on the Seven Pillars Talk Show is a friend of ours. You've met her before, but you get to talk to her again through this new facet. Coach Jayme. Everybody say hi.
Hello, everybody. Teresa, thank you again for having me. It's always a joy.
Always a joy. Always a joy. And so excited because Coach Jayme, I really feel like every time you speak, you bring this new energy. And I know it's divine energy. And I'm so excited to hear what you have to say today for myself and for our audience. I get like a free coaching session right here, right now. And so do you. But one of the things that I really appreciate about you is you're so proactive with really helping people see things and look forward into the future. Now, we don't always get to see our future, but we can see things that can prepare us for encounters and experiences and hopefully help us on that journey. So Coach Jayme, for those that don't know you, will you tell them a little bit about yourself? We do, of course, have you listed on our screen so they know how to find you, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So I am Coach Jayme Sharla. I am an executive wellness coach and a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. I train brains and I shift perspectives. I love being able to help people experience joy now rather than chasing it, thinking that it's at the end of the next promotion, the next goal, the next financial achievement, whatever that is. So people who are struggling with burnout, work-life balance, or feeling lonely, especially around the time of the holidays, that's the thing that I like to be able to focus in on. So that's a very, very small sliver of who I am. Outside of that, I'm a lover of Christ, CrossFit, and coffee. So the triple C's.
And this is why we connected. I'm not so much on the CrossFit, but Christ and coffee.
Yes,
Yay.
yes.
Well, Jayme, you said something that is really important. And before we even go into our discussion today around the holiday season, you said find joy today. Yes. Find joy now. Yeah. I would love for you to talk a little bit about, in your experience as you coach people, you talked about executive coaching. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you have found that are pretty consistent around stealing joy from people?
Yes, it is the condition of I'll be happy when. I'll be able to breathe when. I can finally start focusing on this when. Life will finally be good when. And we live in this fantasy world of when. And I think that that is one downside. There's always pros and cons to everything, but that is one downside of social media, is that we fall into comparisonitis of seeing what we think is the peak of happiness in somebody else's lives. And we think that if and when we have that, then that's when our lives are going to miraculously change and be good. And that's unfortunately just not how it works, because when is not a destination you're ever going to arrive at, because once you get to when, now all of a sudden it didn't feel as good as what you thought it would. And then now you're chasing the next fix or the next when. So I think that that's the ultimate joy killer, is that we get so fixated on this, almost like this high of the future, that we don't even know how to embrace the goodness of what it is that we have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And I think from your experience and your perspective, I know you've coached several of my friends, people that I know that just love you. And every time we're at a meeting together, there's always great accolades because you've done such a great job with that. When you think about, and obviously we're not going to go into a specific situation, but what is a way that you help people navigate their thinking in order to maybe see that I can find joy now? Like, how do you walk them through that process?
Great question. And honestly, if you even would have just asked me this 2 weeks ago, it would have been different. Because I'm also always growing and changing and learning. And I think the best way that I could describe that, I like to treat the brain just like it's a muscle in the gym. I'm a huge fan of fitness. And so I can correlate a lot to that. And if you think about it, you can't just expect to be able to run 10 miles when you never even step foot into a gym. You have to work through like the gunkiness, and you have to show up every day, and it's going to be sore, and it's going to be awkward, and you're going to have the good days, you're going to have bad days, right? I think the same works mentally. And just like forgiveness, we have to choose forgiveness. It's not some magical thing that just happens because you said, I forgive. To love, you have to choose love every day. It's just not this feeling that sticks around. And so the same with joy. And so I think it's practicing and training, also strengthening your joy muscle, which how do we do that? We shift our thoughts. We take captive of our thoughts. We learn how to rewire our patterns and gain confidence, breaking through our limiting belief systems that gives us a better opportunity to choose joy every day.
I love that. I was at a networking group a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they asked about at this group was, do you believe that gratitude creates happiness? And I thought it was such an interesting question. I think, and it's similar to joy, right? Do we think that gratitude creates joy? I think, as I look at this situation and what you just described, when we choose gratitude, the Bible says actually give thanks in all things, not for all things, but in all things. And when we choose to find gratitude in all things, it creates a new frequency level. We talked a little bit about frequency earlier in communication, but it literally lifts us to a higher frequency level, which puts us in joy as opposed to comparison, in joy as opposed to some of those other areas. But what's a way that you can choose gratitude every day?
That is a great question. Because as you were even saying that, I guess, and this, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper, like on the behind the scenes here. The reason how I could say that I don't think happiness does correlate with gratitude, and it's because it's something I've even experienced. When you are forcing yourself to focus on gratitude, but it's coming from a negative place. Like, I really want this, but I should be grateful that I have this. Like, it's almost like doused in shame or just disappointment. Like, your intention behind that is still not actually choosing that gratitude. So I don't feel like just because you are acknowledging something that you should be grateful for, that the happiness is going to be
absolutely
the aftermath from that. Two of the quickest ones that come to mind, I'm a big believer of this, and I always had mentors tell me of this early on in my life. If ever you're having a bad day, go out and do something kind for somebody else, because then all of a sudden you're grateful. Well, even though you're not like saying I'm grateful for, like, you are now grateful just like emotionally for like getting to be the reason why somebody else felt that, but you get to feel it too. I think a second one, and I'm huge on this when it comes to also building confidence. I think it's the quickest way to gain confidence is keeping your promises to yourself.
I've heard you talk about that.
Yes.
So let's go into that.
Yeah. So I think that with that is, so many times we get insecure, or we are living in a negative space because of the lack of confidence we have in ourselves. But if it's something like, hey, I said I'm going to choose to drink water instead of that pop. I'm from Ohio. So instead of that pop,
I'm going to Texas. You're okay. You're okay.
Don't kick me out, guys. I like it here. But like even something as simple as that, right? Honoring the fact that I'm not going to hit the snooze button, deciding to make my bed in the morning before I leave the house. Like these tiny little things, I said I was going to do this, and I kept my word to it. These little things are like, I feel so much better because even though nobody else knew it, like I did something true to myself, and I held that. So that's what I mean by keeping our promises to ourselves.
I love that. And, I think that also helps us have that internal integrity, right? And personal integrity is such a big deal, I think. Well, our title is Home for the Holidays. And, some of us are going to be going home. Some of us are inviting people into our homes. Some of us may not have what has normally felt like home this year because of situations or losses or different types of things like that. And Coach Jayme, I know that puts people in very different and unique headspaces. And one of the things that, I love to share with people is we never know. whether, what somebody else is walking into. Like when we encounter somebody, we have no idea what they just left or what they're about to walk into because we don't even know what we're about to walk into, right? And a lot of times I feel like human nature is we project our emotions, our feelings, our beliefs on others, and that can get us in trouble. So there's a lot of places we can go with this discussion around home for the holidays, but I know that something you're very passionate about is helping people in their mental state as they're going into the holidays. So you've got like 4 or 5 tips. I know I've heard you talk about them before, and I want our full Unbreakable audience to get to hear them. But tell us about that, Coach Jayme.
So before I do that, can I get real with you guys?
Yeah.
Can this be a safe space for everybody involved? Full transparency, the reason why this time of year is so near and dear to me is because I have very much in multiple areas and times throughout my life been on more of the negative experience of a holiday than what I have the positive. I was in a very, very abusive relationship for 5.5 years. And so I never got to enjoy being at a holiday with my significant other because it wasn't allowed. My whole family did not like him, which rightfully so. For in that season, I've also spent the last 5 years that I haven't went home and been with my family for the holidays. I'm single. I don't have any kids, and so there are a lot of levels of loneliness that I had to go through going and being around my family, where it's when are you going to get married? When are you going to do this? Or just me seeing some of my family members fighting or getting frustrated with their kids or their spouse. I'm like, do you realize how much I wish I had that? Like, you're totally missing. Like, you should be so grateful that you're sitting here having your unit within a larger family unit. Or I've lost friends to murder, suicide, car accidents, family members to, cancer and just other health issues and stuff. And so the grief that can fall around the holidays and experiencing those for the first time, like, so from a personal experience with a lot of those areas, like those are some really, really hard things to just have to try to put a happy face on, and pretend that everything is okay at a holiday when it's not. So that's just kind of, I guess, a little bit of a backstory too on why I talk about this so much, because I've been in those seasons, and again, full transparency, probably about, I think it was like 10 years ago or so, I attempted to end my life in the final quarter of the year. And so for those of you out there that are experiencing that, like, I want you to know that you are seen for that, and you truly are not alone. I know a lot of people say that now, but I really, really want you to know that, like, I feel it to my core. And it's almost sometimes like it feels like it's like pouring vinegar like on a wound, because it's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, but it ends up being the darkest time of the year for you. And I think that that's sometimes too, that almost makes it feel a little bit worse. So the first thing, I guess, after explaining all of that, thank you for letting me, strip off some armor there.
Yeah.
I think the first part is starting with gratitude. And I know that I obviously just showed that in the negative side, but it's so easy to slip in and think of all the things that we don't have, but really focus on the things that it is that you do have. What are those things and those people that do bring you joy and bring you love, and maybe slightly remove a little bit of the expectation of this Hallmark movie experience that you're thinking it's going to be, and allow yourself to genuinely be around people. And if you are having a tough time, like, tell them, because people can't, if they don't know something is going on behind the scenes, they can't be there to support you. So I think that would be the first initial tip, although it's scary and it's hard, is reach out. Like, there's support groups and Facebook groups and things like that. And I know it's easy to talk ourselves out of that, but there, I promise, is someone somewhere who is experiencing what you are, and having that like-mindedness with someone is going to establish connection, which can lead to greater communication, which can help you feel more love and joy around a very lonely or just time that makes you feel very misunderstood. The second, speaking of not feeling understood, and you and I were kind of talking about this offline, is we tend to have a lot of different opinions than our family members do, right? Like what's key number one? Don't bring up politics at the holidays, right? Like that's gonna ruin a Thanksgiving dinner real quick.
It's too raw for some people.
Yes. Like, and so I think that I actually read it in Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights. And I loved how he said it. It was a part like where he went away to like kind of work on himself. And he's sitting with these two guys from some other country or whatever. And they're out to eat. And there's this waitress that is taking their order. And apparently she had like a lot of makeup on or like a lot of perfume. And the one guy was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she would do that to try to get a tip. Like that just is degrading herself. And then the other guy was like, hey, man, she's got to pay her bills. Like I think good for her. And then Matthew McConaughey goes to chime in and give his opinion. And even though these two were kind of heated back and forth, clearly like not on the same page of it, they both stopped, looked at him, and they like shut him down right away. And he's like, why are you guys attacking me? I'm so confused. And they go, this is the problem with you Americans, is that you guys are arguing to try to prove who is right rather than just to understand one another. And so exactly with what you started off with, I think that is something as individuals, we can only control what it is that we can control. And quite literally, that's not a lot. It's our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. That's about it. And so if you can start practicing to go into a situation that if somebody says something that is even rubbing you the wrong way, before you respond, is it because you're trying to now put yourself above them to be right? Or are you getting curious to at least just understand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. That is so much, because we really have no clue what people are facing. And Stephen Covey, I talked about him at our meeting that we had today for Unbreakable Business. And I shared the story of Stephen Covey getting on the train ride and how he had a paradigm shift as he realized that this person who on paper was being obnoxious and disrespectful and not taking care of his kids. But in reality, when he finally bridged that gap with, oh, by the way, communication, he was able to discover that this man had gone through a horrific situation and he needed to extend grace as opposed to, judgment. And I think that's a really big thing. As you talked a moment ago on your second point, one of the things that came to my mind is, there are things that people can do if they're having a hard time finding gratitude. There's a lot of things, when we think about the holidays, obviously we've got our internal things, but there's also people like at nursing homes. I did a study about 6 or 7 years ago that showed that the depression rate and even suicide rate for the elderly was so elevated during the holiday season because their mate of, 50, 60, 70 years sometimes is gone and they feel alone and lonely and all of those things. And so there are things that people can do instinctively, like they can get involved with certain things in order to find ways to express gratitude. So I know you talked a little while ago about you don't do a turkey trot, you do a barbell trot.
Barbell crawl, yes.
Barbell crawl. But traditions are a great way to bring in some gratitude, to bring in maybe some familiarity into a situation that doesn't feel familiar anymore. Like we can establish those types of things. Yeah. So in your experience, tell a little bit about that.
About which one?
About how you can initiate things potentially if you're lacking certain things, like how you can create opportunities for gratitude.
Yes. So kind of like I said already, like we live in such a digital world. Like there's so much option out there. Like I think just sometimes it's that pride that makes us feel like, well, that's pathetic. I just have to go find somebody online to talk to because I've been guilty of that. Like, oh, that's nice. Like, cool. You have your family that you can go to, but I have to sit here and I just have to find another group of all these outcasts that don't have anywhere to go either. Like I almost talk myself out of getting the chance to, right? Because our isolation can be a very, very dark place. And once you start down that rabbit hole, like that's probably where you might just stay. So I think taking action is such a big thing. Yeah. Whether it's going and volunteering, honestly, like even just shooting a text message to somebody that is in your life and saying, thank you for making such an impact on my life and being there in this moment 5 years ago, the fact that that's going to make them feel good and probably the response that they're going to give back to you, I think is huge. Also, I spoke on a mental health symposium a few weeks back and it was amazing. There was this one young college girl in the audience and it was like the closing discussion where this doctor was talking about like, okay, here, we just gathered all this information about mental health and all of these great strategies of what we can do and what needs to be done differently. But like, what are we going to do now that we're leaving here today? And so everybody kind of like stopped, right? Like, oh, we got all these good nuggets, but we're not doing anything with that information. And this young college girl stood up and she mentioned how, like she struggles really heavily with ADHD and has been bullied and made fun of her entire life. And she's like, you know what? I finally decided that I don't want to feel this way anymore. So I created a group where people could come and we all like met out at like Panera and we would do like a book club, or we would do like a fun night of just like getting together, or we would go to someone's house and play video games, whatever. Like she took that initiative. Like, yes, it takes courage and it is like, I have to get out of my own way enough to do that. But if you can't find someone, be that person, be that someone, and then watch how many people come to you because of it. After my parents got divorced when I was younger, my mom never had anywhere to go on Christmas Eve because we were all with my dad and my dad's side of the family. And then so with that, my mom ended up finding a group of people, and then like my aunt and stuff, they would like all get together and they did what they called like a misfit Christmas. Aww. And they still have that tradition now where it's like, hey, that's fine. Everybody's quote unquote with family, but this is our family like for the day. And it's just such a beautiful thing. So as you mentioned, create traditions.
I love that. One of the things that we created several years back, our kid, Sophia, our youngest, who's now 16, and we started this when she was like 2 years old. Like it's been a minute, but we have this Thanksgiving tablecloth, and because sometimes people come into your house and they're family, so they're invited, but we're not always happy to see everybody, right? Yeah. That is a choice, but it's the truth also, right? Yeah. But so one of the things that we did is we're like, okay, one thing we can do to create unity in this is to create that tradition. So we got this really cool, actually a friend of ours gave it to us, this tablecloth that was blank on the inside, like the middle, and it had some Thanksgiving. So we knew it was not a sheet, right? It was the right tablecloth. And that year we had everybody that came over for Thanksgiving write down something that they were grateful for. And you could just see how that one thing, and then when they would come back the next year, they had something to look forward to, even if, maybe we had an argument, or even if, something wasn't 100% like perfect, like that darn Hallmark, right? That ruins everything. But, even if we didn't have that Hallmark type thing, they had something to look forward to. And they knew that, even with the chaos in the world, even with all the things, that when they came to the poor's house on Thanksgiving, that we would have a tablecloth that they could write something that they were grateful for. And you could just see how that lifted everybody. And it was something so simple. We have to track it down every year and make sure we put it in the right spot. But, that's a little thing. It doesn't take much. It didn't add any extra money, right? Yeah. But it was something that let everybody feel seen, valued, and heard, which is a desire that we all have. And it let them contribute. Yeah. So, one thing I want to bring up, because I want to spin into another discussion that we talked about for a few minutes beforehand. But one of the things that, as we think of people that come into our lives or potentially come into our families around the holidays, is the fact that everybody is probably experiencing something different. And you use the word intention a lot. And, I'm guilty many times of throwing out invites and not really putting a whole lot of energy into it. But I'm like, I just got to get this off my checklist. I got to get the invite out there. I've got to make sure everybody's included so I didn't miss anybody. But with intention, I could reach out to those people before they show up and say, hey, I know this is a big deal. Is there anything I should be prepared for or know about before you show up? Right? Mm-hmm. Because you talked earlier about a celebration that you have coming up, and I would love for you to share that. But when I ask with intention that specific question, I'm setting an opportunity for me to honor people where they're at and to open up that door of communication before they show up in my house.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to try to keep myself on track because I have like 3 different points I want to make here. First one, when it comes to intention, is quite literally the intention of the holiday, right? Like we now also treat that like so much of a tradition or as an autopilot thing that it's like, well, it's Christmas, so I have to do this, and this, and I have to go here. I have to buy this. I have to do this. And you miss the whole freaking point.
Absolutely.
Same with Thanksgiving. Like, I got to do this, and then we got to go here, and then I got to go bump into Uncle Bob that I could care less to see, or like I have to send out invites. But why are you sending out the invites? Is it just because the world says that this is a tradition and we're supposed to get together on this day because all the stores are closed anyways? Or is it like I'm genuinely being intentional, inviting these people because we are going to get this chance to break bread and fellowship together?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I think I want to start with that when it comes to intention. The second, again, we can only control what we can control, and that's ourselves, our thoughts, our reactions, and our emotions. And I had another incredible human in my life tell me this one time. It was actually on the verge of an argument.
Oh.
And they had told me, they're like, Jayme, here's what you said, but was that your intention when you said it? And ever since that moment happened, I'm a big believer of actions speak louder than words, but what were your intentions behind those words? And so I think, again, going back to the understanding point, that even if somebody says something with a sharp tone, do you think it really was because they were trying to hurt you? Or was it just because that they were hurting and that was how they kind of lashed out a situation? Or is it maybe that they didn't even intend to have that come across in a crappy way, but it got received that way, right? So I think that that's another way to take intention into consideration. So then now the third point, yes, something I am super, super excited about, which I'm so thankful for my friend, Heather, who I just got a chance to celebrate for her on this similar thing this past weekend, because I wasn't going to make a big deal out of it. But next month marks 1 whole year of being alcohol free for me. So yeah, super, super excited about that. And I also actually, for the first time in 5 years, am going home to be able to spend Christmas with my family.
Wow.
And so with those two things already, and you were speaking kind of about like the communication ahead of time, nobody knows which, oh shoot, if anybody, my people are watching, you didn't just hear that because my mom is the only one that knows. But with that is that, like, I was already even saying like, hey, here's all these fun ways that we could make like mocktails, or also like, hey, if all of you guys are drinking, like, I don't want you to think that that's going to be a problem like around me. It's just something I'm not going to be partaking in.
Right. I think that's a big deal because, you know, one of the hard things that I run into anytime somebody's dealing with a lifestyle change or a grief situation, things like that, is that people around them, they don't really know how to respond. And so a lot of times they either back up because they don't want to be in that awkward space, or they kick themselves about 45 times before you're gone because they said something wrong, or they just, you know, it's challenging. So I love the fact that you took the initiative to say, hey guys, look, I know this is good for you. I want you to know it's okay with me. Like, there's no judgment, but this is the life that I'm choosing. And so, and I'm okay. Like, let's have fun together, but you don't have to worry about me feeling this way. Well, a good example, and really not a good example, but a good example is a friend of mine had a situation that had to do with suicide, and it was a horrible situation. And after taking the much needed time off work to grieve and to mourn and do all the things, she went back to work, and everybody at work just like got busy when she came by. They shuffled papers. They didn't want to make eye contact with her. Like, they really struggled because they didn't know what to do. And I think it's as simple sometimes as just opening up that communication and saying, hey, I'm here for you. Is there anything I need to know? Is there anything I can do? And sometimes we, like you just did, take the initiative and say, look, this is it. I'm okay. Let's get to work. Let's have fun. Let's enjoy the holiday, whatever that looks like. Right.
Yeah. That's so true. And, you know, obviously this isn't a one size fits all statement for what I'm about to say, but exactly with what you just pointed out is that more times than not, it's more awkward for everybody else and the person who's actually experiencing it. Cause another analogy that like popped into my head is like a lot of like fitness people, like the lifestyle of like clean eating and stuff like that, where it's like, you can eat whatever you want. Like, I'm not, and that's okay. Like, if I brought my food. Yeah. Like, I brought my own food. Like, that's okay. I'm trying to understand why this is uncomfortable for you. Like, is this now kind of like you projecting something that it's making you feel guilty because that's something you're not doing? Like, cause that's also something like, that's a boundary I can't I can't wear that. Like if that's the case, right?
Right.
In situations like with grief and stuff like that, I think, I'm gonna zoom this back out, right? Because we are talking about the holidays, but I think the biggest thing that we need to do as a country is slow down,
Mm-hmm.
because we are rushing to just get through the holidays. We are trying to finish up with our goals, and we're trying to make sure we please everybody else and all of these things, that we're forgetting to just simply slow down and be with the people around us. Because again, going back to your point, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter how perfect the decorations are, who all showed up. It matters who's there in front of you and how are you spending that time together.
Yeah.
How much quality is behind that, and being able to actually slow down enough to make space for any conversation too, even if it isn't a big, heavy topic. Like Jayme would be like, you know what? I'm just looking forward to catch up with you, not having my phone in the room, getting a real life interaction with you to just fellowship, connect. That's why our world is so lonely, because we don't do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, I love that. And I think one of the biggest distractions that we have in the world is distractions. It's all of the noise. I was watching a little reel on a podcast today. Again, distractions, but it was a good one. And it was about
great justification.
It was literally about that whole philosophy of the enemy. We have an enemy, an adversary in the world that tries to stop us from genuine connections, because we can change the world together. Like there's so much we can do together. There's so much we can do to uplift one another. That's God's design, is that we are connected and that we're part of the body, right? And so of course, the adversary of the world wants to distract and divide and with all of those things, but we get to choose to do that. However, it also takes being a good steward of ourselves. And you used a word that I think gets used very often in the wrong context, but I know you'll clear us up. And that word is boundaries.
Yes.
So Coach Jayme, I know you just launched your Better Boundaries course, and you guys, it's going to be posted in the link below so you can jump on and learn more about it. But Coach Jayme, boundaries are such a big deal, but they're not walls. And I think that that's something that, there's a big difference. People they hear the word boundary, like, I'm just putting up my boundaries, like nobody's getting near me. Well, that's not really what it's designed to be. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, 1,000%. I love that the word is trending and people are at least thinking of boundaries, but my favorite quote of all time: we need water to survive, but water can also kill us, right? You have to learn how to meet in the middle there. And I think so many people are abusing the power of using the word boundary. But to take it even a step further, and this is kind of the whole intention of my course, is that, like I'm trying to even think of a specific word that I could use, but like, how like you'll hear somebody say a word and you get it, but if somebody were to actually stop you in the middle of the conversation, be like, can you give me the definition of that word? And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know. And then you want to change the subject because you feel really, really silly. I think that's what happens with boundaries, is everybody feels like conceptually they know what a boundary is, but nobody actually knows and understands the definition of a boundary. And that's the basics of what my course starts out with. Like before we even say we're going to have a boundary, we should probably know what it actually is.
I love that.
Yes. And then the second part that I go to within my course too is that a lot of people like to throw out something and say it's a boundary when in reality it's a rule. And so again, being able to be crystal clear on what it is that you're talking about before actually trying to project and implement that so-called boundary is going to be super, super important. So yeah, that's kind of like the initial point, I think, is that we need to understand what a boundary is if we're going to effectively use it, to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, that we are actually using them in a way that is going to create a healthy relationship with ourselves, but also with everybody else around us. Because that's the other thing, is the second someone thinks, oh, you want me to put a boundary around my family? Do you know who my family is? Do you realize how chaotic this already is? They're not going to follow it. And so you just settle for keeping the peace. No boundaries are set, and then nobody wins because there's this constant clash between you guys. But if you know how to properly establish a boundary, and then properly communicate the boundary, everybody in the long run wins.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about our kids. We think about, my husband's business. We have employees. People need to know what lane to play in. And when I think about boundaries, a lot of times is it allows you to have room, and then it says, okay, this is kind of where it stops. Whether it's with your family or with relationships, like, and then there's so much that can go into that. But I do believe that in today's world, when we are in the reels world, we hear something, we see a 30-second reel about something, and we're like, oh, that's my favorite podcaster, and they said this, therefore I need to go and put walls around me and everybody. And that also is a trick of the enemy, in my opinion, to keep us from being able to have relationships with people, and quite frankly, relationships with ourselves.
Ooh, see, we're going to have to go for like a part 2, 3, 4, and 5, because even that right there, like tying it back into the loneliness aspect, that's why so many people are lonely right now. We have more accessibility to connection than ever before, yet we are the loneliest we've ever been. And the reason why is because I love how you said that, right? Like the reels world. That is so good. I will quote you every time on that, because that is genius. In the reels world, it is, you need to focus on you. You need to worry about yourself. You need to build your empire. And then do you notice how everything is me, I?
Yes.
No wonder you're lonely, is because you're not even letting anybody else be a part of that.
Right.
And that's clearly not how the Jesus way calls us to do either, right? Like we should be selfless. Like, yes, boundaries being in place to make sure that it's not being taken advantage of, but like life is so much better together. We are meant to be together. And so having a healthy way to establish boundaries, I think, is of crucial importance in your life.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that boundaries is such a buzzword right now is because we've been in a situation for so long where we've had no control.
Oh, so true. Yes. Yeah. We are grasping onto control in any way that we possibly can.
Yeah. And with that comes just, chaos. And that's where I think we're at. But yeah. Wow. So as we pull all this back together and we prepare people for the holidays, we talked on a lot of different things, and I loved all of our discussion. I feel like we could have gone on all these different trails, but tying it all back together, I really feel like, Coach Jayme, that some of those nuggets that you talked about, getting involved with people, right? Being intentional with the things that we do, giving other people grace, and giving ourselves grace, and understanding, again, we don't know what somebody is walking into our house with, but how can we love them and show them all those things anyway, and the gratitude piece. So how would you sum this up in a way to tell somebody, okay, look, Thanksgiving literally is a week and like 2 days away, right? A week and 2 days away. That seems like an instant, but you have time to make it an amazing holiday.
Yeah. So many different ways I could go with this. I'm going to start it with the number one way that I pretty much start absolutely every single tip I give somebody. Stop what you're doing. Sit with yourself. Because if you just keep going and going, you don't actually even make time to sit with who you are, and what you want. And I think especially with the holiday being a week away, it's easy for us to just get like all this turmoil in our brain of like, I have to do this, and this. I have to go here. I'm worried because I don't have anywhere to go, and all this. And it's just the chaos puts us into analysis paralysis. So if you stop and you breathe, what is it that I would want to do, or how do I want to feel on Thanksgiving? Let's go super simple. I want to feel thankful. Okay. So what are some of the things that you can do to ensure you feel thankful? That can start as simple as, I'm going to, on Thanksgiving, reach out to 3 to 5 people that I'm thankful for.
Yeah. And genuinely reach out, right?
Yes. I am going to reach out to somebody and ask, say, hey, I don't have anywhere to go, or hey, I'm really going through this, through this massive thing right now. Could we make time to get together? And guess what? Newsflash, guys, I know this may be a shocker. You can still celebrate a holiday, not on a holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of traditions, like sometimes it's
Yeah.
okay if you break it. Like if there's people or you're busy, like some people have to work on Thanksgiving. You could still get together and fellowship with people the next day.
Sure.
Or
Day
the
before.
next day.
Yeah.
Right?
We
And
can
guess
celebrate
what?
right
We
here.
also don't need a holiday to do that. So don't let the holiday also put this extra pressure on it having to be this, when I finally have this, then I will love the holiday moments. No, like do what it is that you can today to make it a great day. Do what it is that you can today to make it a thankful Thanksgiving. Starts and ends with you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Coach Jayme, thank you for your time. Always, always for your nuggets, your wisdom, and your willingness to be transparent and to be vulnerable, because we all go through stuff. Like and then one of the tricks again of the world is to make us feel like, everybody else is perfect and we're the only ones. And that is just such a lie. Like everybody goes through something. And when you can be transparent with yourself and, get with those questions, our brains are designed that the minute you ask a question, it's going to go to an answer. We just don't ask enough questions, particularly to ourselves, right? And we are the life that we get to live. So it's important that we get real clear with who we are. But I love your energy. I love the way you serve people. And that's how I look at what you do, is you provide a great service to people that really helps them take their life to a new level, because like you just said, it starts and ends with you, with them uniquely. And we are the best investment we'll ever make is in ourselves. So thank you for being part of our Unbreakable Life program. Thank you for being part of the journey and for serving and loving people. So God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll cut that little baby piece out.
Perfect.
Yeah. He's like, y'all stopped too fast. You got it?
That was